right. I think, ladies and gentlemen, we are alive. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to each and every one of you. It is, of course, Wednesday, the 25th, and it is 9:30 9:29. It will be 9:30 very soon. So welcome to each and every one of you. Everything that we're about to discuss in today's live stream is only relevant insofar as if nothing changes. Right, this is the most up-to-date information, but luckily in today's stream, we're not going to be discussing a whole lot. We're going to be watching. We're going to be watching Afriforum because Afriforum has a live stream scheduled for 10 o'clock, so that's in half an hour from right now. And in that live stream, they say they have a dossier on Fikile Mbalula, which, makes me very happy. First, because I can say his name, Fikile Mbalula, which I really enjoy. But then also, I think the scumbag needs to go to jail, right? I personally think that every single ANC member needs to go to jail. And I think the parasitic state of South Africa needs to be put to rest. I don't believe that this parasitic relationship that we have with the majority of the country just feeding off of the minority is a workable solution. I don't think it can continue to work this way. So, yeah. Sorry, guys. I have, I think I'm getting sick. So I have some allergies that's going on at the moment. Dolph, how you doing? Chris, how you doing? Chris the Toy, how you doing? Osborne TFC, I hope all of you are doing incredibly well. Of course, all of you that aren't chatting in chat, I still hope that you're having a wonderful day and that everything is going absolutely swimmingly. I'm really looking forward to this live stream from Afriforum. I guess the thing that I really just don't want to see is Afriforum making claims without providing any evidence. I think one of the things that one of the mistakes that Afriforum makes, and I can show you guys what is currently happening in South Africa with Afriforum and the things that Afriforum is trying to do. Right, so you go over to ENCA. 2 hours ago, they posted this clip from a conversation that they had with Kali Kriel yesterday. And in this, the host presses Kali Kriel about the claims made by President Donald Trump that there is a genocide happening in South Africa. And Afriforum, as they have done for the last 2 years almost, continue to maintain that there is no genocide in South Africa. This is a fact that I have taken issue with Afriforum, because it rejects, or at least to a very large degree, it misses the point of what a genocide is, right? Afriforum seems to be, and this genuinely is one of my biggest problems with not just Afriforum. Sakeliga has the same problem. Every single activist organization in this country that is fighting the communists and the freedom fighters of this country seems to miss what is actually happening. So let me show you guys this. I just tweeted this a bit ago. Dirk Herman, right? So Dirk Herman, he's from Solidariteit. Sakeliga has done the same stuff over and over and over again. And effectively what Dirk is saying here is they're going to up the ante. They're going to do more workshops. They're going to do more visits to other countries. They're going to spread the fire, as it were, to tell the world what South Africa and the ANC is doing about the race laws and the damages of the race laws. And they say they're going to do even more investigations and show unequivocally how race laws are damaging this country and how it is not transformational, but instead it is actually keeping people back. And my problem with Solidariteit, my problem with Afriforum, my problem with every single activist or counter institution in South Africa is that they have not yet recognized and realized that the media is the propaganda wing of the ANC. So when Kali Kriel and Afriforum touts that there is no genocide, I believe that if you actually were to ask Kali Kriel and the people of Afriforum behind the scenes, do you believe that there is a genocide in the truest sense of the word in South Africa against Afrikaners and white South Africans, they will all have to admit yes. Because genocide isn't just the mass slaughter of people. That's like the last step before you get to the denial and the sort of pretending like it never actually happened. You go to Rwanda, it didn't start with, a 500,000 people dead in the first night. That's not where it started. It started decades earlier with a consistent sort of othering of the groups, sort of constantly going, oh, this is the group that's causing all of our pain. This is the group that is destroying our country. This is the group to blame for all of our mistakes and all of our flaws. And eventually you start creating this narrative within the mind of the people who consistently hear it that, well, if these people are indeed the main issue, then we should deal with that main issue. When you have people constantly singing, kill the boer, kill the farmer, that creates in the mind of the people hearing it this idea that it must be okay to kill the boer, kill the farmer, to kill white people. And if you do it over and over again, remember, I just want to point this out, the courts of South Africa found that the old flag, a piece of cloth, is hate speech, and you cannot fly the old flag. But they found that a song directly calling for the death and murder of white people, that's historical struggle songs, and it's not hate speech. Just to give you an idea of the two-tier system that we have here in South Africa. So there is a consistent othering of people. Not only that, but genocide extends much further than just killing. Genocide can also be a cultural genocide, where you are just constantly erasing the culture of one group of people in your country based purely on their race or on their culture. There can be religious genocide, where you're actually targeting people of a specific faith and religion. A great example of religious genocide would be some of the Asian countries, right? And for this, we can even look to places like Korea, Japan, where they have not the right to religion. They have the right to worship, which is a clever little detour. You see, the right to worship says that you can have a church and you can meet at that church and you can sing and you can do whatever you want at that church, but you can't evangelize. So you cannot go and tell other people about Jesus Christ. You cannot go and invite other people to your church. That is illegal. That would be considered religious genocide, right? Because you are trying, at the very least, to kill a specific religion. Now, the world over, no one really cares about that anymore. And to be fair, Christians were from the beginning aware that we will face persecution, and that's just the price that we will pay for Jesus Christ. And that's fine, right? But fundamentally, it's important to understand that these are things that is happening. And the ANC is actually moving towards the right to worship rather than the right to religion. That will come in due time, especially once we have the sort of new licensing and all the rest of it. But what Afriforum should not do in this, and we'll see once this dossier comes out, they should not do what they did with News 24, where they made a bunch of allegations, things that they have heard from senior journalists or whatever the case might be, and then they relied, or hoped at least, that a free media would actually follow up. A free media would start to go look at what is actually happening here. What Afriforum needs to realize is the media of South Africa is not free. You look at this, right, and this is genuinely, you look at the actual clip, right, and none of this happened. So ENCA tweets out or posts and says, Afriforum CEO Kali Kriel has, for the first time, acknowledged that there is no genocide of white farmers in South Africa. That's just not true. Because I remember about a week after President Trump started calling it, well, first, President Trump wasn't the first to call it a genocide. President Trump was the first to call it oppression of white people, which it is. It was the media in South Africa that started claiming that President Trump is saying that there is a genocide. Right? And then President Trump just started playing into it because it drives the media crazy, and President Trump likes driving the media crazy. But ultimately, Afriforum already a week after this denied that there is a genocide, constantly said there is no genocide, something that I've taken issue with, and I have actually shown you the multiple definitions of genocide. And by every definition of genocide that you go, the ANC is responsible for a genocide against white minority in this country. Doesn't matter which definition you use, that is the truth. So Afriforum is playing this sort of game where they are in opposition to the government and they do want to represent conservative values, but at the same time they think that the media is still an independent body. So you look, for example, at Heidi, the girl that was actually attacked in her house by violent black criminals, who then suddenly became this anti-white hater for the media. She retweets, right? Afriforum's apparent first ever admission that it isn't genocide, even though it isn't their first ever claim that it isn't genocide, and goes, well, and tweets out where President Trump says terrible things are happening in that country. The things that they're doing to white people, it is unacceptable, which is literally true. What is happening to white people in South Africa is unacceptable. Doesn't matter who you are. If you are a decent, good person, or at least good as far as humans can be good, you will know that what is happening to white people in South Africa is unacceptable. Point blank, full stop. In the exact same way that what is happening to black people as a result of this hateful terrorist regime called the ANC is absolutely terrible. Again, no one can actually deny that. The difference between the black majority and the white minority is that we didn't vote for this. In fact, we're desperately trying to not have this, right? We're not the ones who voted them into power. And so at some point, I have to go, you get what you voted for. I'm not going to fight for your freedom. I'm not going to fight for your economic well-being because you voted yourself into this mess. You continue to vote yourself into poverty by following the ANC and the EFF and the MK. So I'm not sorry about this. Like, I can't be sorry about this because that would be me trying to help you out of the fire and you're trying to pull me into the fire. At some point, I just have to let go and say, well, now you burn. Because I tried to help you. You would not listen because I'm white and apparently you can't listen to white people. So, go off. Go suffer on your own. But the white minority did not vote for this. We are not supportive of the ANC. So what Afriforum is hoping for, and I really hope that this dossier isn't that, they're hoping that they're going to put a lot of the allegations against Fikile and Mbalula in the public sphere, and then the public sphere, the media, is actually going to follow up and look whether or not there is any evidence to any of these stories. That would be a flawed strategy. That would be a flawed strategy. Because exactly what happened when Afriforum suggested that News 24 is on the payroll of the ANC will happen here. The media will not investigate Fikile and Mbalula. The media will investigate Afriforum. The media will show that Afriforum is in fact the hateful group here, and Afriforum is in fact the problem, because people like Heidi Giokos and ENCA and Peter de Toy and all these other guys, they are a propaganda wing of the ANC. They work at the behest of the ANC. And if Afriforum doesn't realize that soon, they're going to become an obsolete organization. Look, it's time that conservatives, and specifically conservative white people, stop being afraid. They stop trying to cozy up to these corrupt media individuals. They are corrupt. They are leftist nutcases. They're not your friends. So trying to appease them, trying to police your language in such a way that it doesn't cause offense, that doesn't work. Their default position is that they're offended by you because you're the wrong skin color. If people like Heidi Giokos could have her way, she would love to see white people actually slaughtered by the millions, right? This is something that they would love, and they would ultimately go, this is what you get for occupying Africa, right? Because that's just how it is. Of course, Heidi will escape. She'll use her contacts to get out of the country before she herself has to be sacrificed on the altar of progressivism. But fundamentally, this is their mindset. This is what they stand for. So to argue for a single second that you can sort of appeal to the media, you should treat the media the way the President Trump treats the media. They are the enemy. They're the enemy class. And if there were to be any sort of action, they will be just as guilty as their ANC masters, their EFF masters, and all the rest of them. So I really hope. I really hope. Black Fragility loves to lie about something Trump doesn't actually believe. Prophet, how are you doing? Sounds like white people doesn't want to be held accountable for their actions. Calvin, what actions? Name the action that I am personally responsible for. Name it, please. I was 9 years old when apartheid came to a fall. What exactly was I personally involved in? Calvin, you're a moron. As simple as that. You're trying to make me guilty of something that I'm not guilty of. Every single suffering in this country, every single piece of black suffering in this country can be traced back right to the ANC. White people had nothing to do with it. And how do I know this? Because from 1994 until 2007, black people were actually starting to do better. The country was actually growing. Unemployment was actually going down. Black people on that trajectory would have been a majority in the middle class as well as a majority in the upper classes. Black people would have done phenomenally well. And then in 2007, something happened. The ANC fully adopted communism and socialism, and since then they have destroyed the futures of black kids and black people in this country more broadly. White people had nothing to do with this. We didn't vote for Jacob Zuma. We didn't get Jacob Zuma into power. So what the hell are you talking about? The mistakes currently, the black kids that are living on the streets without any ability to work has nothing to do with white people. I will not take responsibility for that because I can show you the policies of the ANC that have led to those black kids living on the streets. So sorry, if you want to fleece yourself, right, because you're so ashamed of your white skin, by all means, but do it somewhere else. You're annoying and you're boring. I am not buying into the white victim or the white oppressor narratives. I have no white guilt whatsoever. I am a German by descent. I am South African by birth, and I'm damn well proud of both. So please, go and do something else somewhere else. Mandela effect, when masses of people have false memories. Remembers the ANC used the word genocide first in the ICJ case. Well, yeah, I think fundamentally, the biggest issue that I have, at least here in South Africa, is that white liberals are giving the ANC a free pass. You know, you have black people. I want to show you guys this because we need more people like this in our country. This is the kind of people that we need, both white and black, but we need more people like this in our country. Look at Pumlani here, right? Pumlani, actually, I really enjoy Pumlani's posts because he is a free market capitalist. And Pumlani is one of those people that are desperately trying to fight the incredible evil that is socialism and communism in this country and the way that black people have been captured by that ideology. White liberals are fighting against black people like Pumlani, people that are trying to save their people from the destruction of the ANC, cannot do it because they constantly have to fight the white liberals, right? Like it's the white liberals that is standing against them. John Vosloo, who would want to be seen with you. Now, I don't know if John Vosloo is actually a white guy, but I'm willing to bet that he probably is. White saviors is genuinely, like, if we want to talk about a group that we need to get rid of as quickly as possible in this country, it would be white liberal saviors. They are the biggest cancer in this society because they give the ANC a shield to hide behind. People like Max de Pree. Max de Pree loves to say that he is one of the biggest attackers of the ANC. But look at the places where it matters. The areas where we would need to attack the ANC on. Those are the places where Max de Pree is fully on board with the ANC. But here is just an excuse for the ANC to make a mess of the country. True. Calvin, but now you're changing the argument. I see you're one of those people. Since you don't have a comeback to what I literally just told you, now you shift the argument. So you go from it being a race struggle, which didn't work for you, and now you go for the other communist attack, which is, it's a class struggle. It's the top 1% that we should actually be worried about. Pick your battle, my man. Pick your battle. Do you want to be an old school communist? You know, class struggle and all that didn't really work out that well, but you have 100 million bodies behind you to show how not well, it worked, right? Or do you want to be a neo-communist where, it's actually the class struggle, but it's also the race struggle, and it's also the gender struggle, and it's all of these struggles. Pick a battle, pick a lane, go with that lane. You're wrong on both of those, FYI, because the top 1% isn't sitting there laughing at everyone else. The top 1% is not a monolith. The top 1% still consists of thousands of individuals, each with their own ideas. Are there super bad top 1% people in the world? Absolutely. Bill Gates, George Soros, all of these people are super, super bad. But there's also really good top 1% people in this world that are desperately trying to make the world a better place. The issue is that you need an enemy because you need black people to feel like victims. Because if black people stop feeling like victims, you're out of a grift. Right? You make yourself feel good by thinking you're helping black people. But in order for black people to think that they even need your help, you need to make sure that they have an enemy that they can point to, but it needs to be an enemy that they can't actually defeat. Like the 1%. No black person in South Africa is really going to the 1% based on their own merits, right? If it's not for BEE or some government program, that's just not happening because the ANC makes sure that only people they approve of get into the top 1%. So just to be clear, even white people are not making it into the top 1% without the government saying so. The people who are currently in the top 1% are people who were there from the beginning, and the other white people that are there are people who are working with the government in order to be in the top 1% because it's all an accessed gate. You only get through if you have a ticket, and the ANC is the one selling the tickets. But you need an enemy, right? Because if you don't have an enemy, how are you going to convince black people that they need your protection? It's nonsense, my bro. You're caught in an ideology with no escape. Because if what you say is real, it means that no one can ever save themselves. It means that we can never fix the system. If what you believe is real, then we can't fix the system. The problem, of course, is what you believe is backed up by nothing other than, trust me, bro. You have no evidence for anything that you claim. You just make the claims because you think it sounds good, but when we actually start to examine it, it falls apart under the weight of its own incompetence. You're forgetting about climate change? Must fight comrades, Viva. Yeah, climate change is one of the biggest jokes ever. I don't think you can walk and chew gum at the same time, Calvin. You can't even make a coherent argument all by itself. So I would say you're grossly overestimating your own ability to do anything. Your arguments are just like, dude, I could literally open a communist handbook right now and I'll find your arguments right there. That is how unoriginal you are. And the problem is, if I ask you a single question about what you believe, you have no evidence to back it up because you don't actually come to your conclusions based on reality. You come to your conclusions because your group told you this is the right thing to think. You're part of the communists, and the communists told you the white people are the problem. And so you believe it. You're part of the communists, and so they told you that men are the problem. So you believe it. You're part of the communists, and they told you the 1% is the problem, and so you believe it. You don't have any actual reasons why you believe it. You don't have any actual arguments why you believe it. You just know that you do. And that is why whenever you're actually challenged on your views, you run away. The internet is literally full of your activists being cornered in a debate and then running away. Just going, I will not debate Nazis. I will not debate racists. Yeah, because you just don't have the ability to actually do so. Trump is a plane for the ANC. Jaguar, how you doing, sir? Determining, how you doing, bro? Love the honesty, fun. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that, real. Cyber Toast, how you doing, sir? South Africa is in a mess because of a government or a party, ANC, that do not want to let go of the past. They destroyed the country and are still blaming apartheid for their destructive mindset. True, but I also think that there is a little bit of good news on this front. And that is that I think a lot of black people are starting to realize, wait, it can't be apartheid, right? I think there's a lot of black people that are starting to wake up and going, This just doesn't make sense. I see you guys running the country, and things don't seem to do well. Right? I don't remember this Evia de Klerk guy. I wasn't alive when this Evia de Klerk guy was running about, and so I'll just not believe you on this. I think it's just you. And you can actually see it. They're working very, very hard at the moment. Cyril Ramaphosa is to try and blame President Trump for all of the failings in South Africa. They're working very hard. Cyril Ramaphosa just in the last 2 weeks have done like 3 or 4 speaking engagements. And at every single one of those speaking engagements, he has spoken about President Trump and how America is responsible for the suffering of the South African people. How it's America that is spreading lies about South Africa, and that's hurting South Africa. Because that's all the ANC has. When things fail, it has to be someone else's fault. Right? This is the problem with the communist mindset. The communist mindset says it can't be your fault because you're black and therefore you have no agency, which is actually the racist position, by the way. When you actually speak to white liberals, their racism becomes incredibly apparent. So, for example, in America, they're currently arguing about whether or not voter ID is a good idea. You guys will know what voter ID is because in South Africa, we have to go register to vote. You have to be registered to vote. In order to register, you have to have an ID or a driver's license, something to prove that you are actually who you are and you are a citizen of the country. Pretty much every country in the world has voter registration. You have to register in order to vote. The country needs to know that you are, in fact, a citizen of the country. Right? This makes sense. Everyone would go, yeah, that makes perfect sense. But listen to what the liberals have to say about this. The liberals say this is a racist law. Why? Because most black people don't know how to get voter registration. Most black people don't know how to get identification, how to get photo ID, how to get a driver's license, how to get a social security. Like, what the hell are you talking about? Really? So you don't think, and by the way, the actual evidence shows that about 95% of black people have photo ID. So black people in America are perfectly capable of getting their own IDs. They know how to do it. But from the liberal perspective, black people are so incapable that any attempt to hold black people accountable for their own failings is racism. How dare you hold them accountable? Well, I say to you, black people will never liberate themselves until they hold themselves accountable for their failures. And you see it. When you look at black people that are actually moving ahead and actually getting ahead, what is the one thing that is true? They don't blame other people for their failings. They make mistakes, they learn from the mistakes, they move on. And they grow from those mistakes. And they keep growing. And then eventually they make a success of themselves. Because that's how you get ahead in life. Not by blaming or not by pretending to be a victim, not by claiming that everyone else should save you. That's not how you get ahead. It's just not how it works. Jacques, I made the point, right, that there are black people in the country. By definition, what I said automatically says not all black people. Because there are black people in this country who don't play the victim, who are perfectly happy to take responsibility for their actions, learn from it, and grow from it. And they're successful. They're super successful. You can see it. You can look at the black people that are moving ahead in this country. They don't waste their time blaming everyone else for all of their failings because they understand the only way I grow is if I take responsibility for my failings, right? I have to, because I have to learn from those mistakes. The problem is that you have this majority that have bought into the lies of white liberals and the ANC and just go, well, I'm a victim. Everything that's wrong in my life is the result of someone else. Someone else made me do it. Someone else hurt me. And so what can I do, right? All right, so we are close. We are close. They have an ID, but how they got it is the question. However, if you correct them on the problem, you are labeled a racist who wants apartheid to return. Well, we spoke about this yesterday. I think if you were genuinely to look into who wants apartheid back, you'll find very few people. Very few people are interested in getting apartheid back. Um, I said this yesterday, but it bears saying again just very quickly. When you hear people say, a minority of people, but still people, when you hear people say they miss the good old days, when you actually drill down and you ask them what they miss, it's never the race laws or the racial system of apartheid. It's individual things that just happen to be really good under apartheid, right? Things like they felt safe. They could leave their houses unlocked. They could go out in the middle of the night and they wouldn't be attacked. Things of that nature. Well, guess what? You can have that in a country that isn't segregated by race. You can have that. But you need a government that upholds the law, that enforces the law, and that keeps its citizens safe, because that's what it has to be, right? You need that kind of government. And then white people, black people, brown people, Indian people, everyone can live together, and you will have that level of safety. And how do I know this? Because when you go into estates in this country, where you have black people, Indian people, colored people, white people, all living in the same estate, the one truth of those estates is that no one steals from each other, right? I mean, I look at my estate where I live. Kids' bicycles will be out in the driveway. People leave their doors unlocked, sitting inside their homes just chatting. The neighbors aren't walking into their neighbors' houses and robbing them blind. But it's not a uniracial thing, right? It's just that everyone who lives in that complex all want the same stuff. And that's ultimately all you need to do. You need someone to enforce the law, to keep the citizens safe, and then everyone will live together happy as Larry. That's just the facts. Yeah, so I think that's mostly what people say when they say we miss apartheid or we miss the good old days. They're thinking, now I don't remember the good old days or whatever. I was 9. So for me, my first memories are Nelson Mandela being the president in the 1995 World Cup. So I don't have the good old days or whatever the case may be. But I think that's what people mean. They're referring to individual things. They're not really referring to the system at large. And there are better ways to say it, but some people like to push the anti and offend so that they can see people have meltdowns. And I respect that, right? I'm a bit of a contrarian myself, so do your thing. Apartheid never ended in South Africa. The colors just changed. We do live in an apartheid system right now, right? And you see the exact same thing in this apartheid system that you're seeing in the old apartheid system. If you look at economic growth under the old apartheid regime, the one truth was that it could never get consecutive growth. The economy was always up and then down and then up and then down and then up and then down and then up and then down. And that's the reason. When you have, and the one thing that I wish people would just start realizing, the apartheid government was not a free market capitalist government. It was a socialist government. It was a socialist government that just happened to pretend to hate communism, right? Because they thought communism should happen differently than what the ANC wanted to do. Jaguar, with the 5 memberships, really appreciate you, sir. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But so if you have all of these big groups, right? If you have this big government, you're just never going to have good growth. Growth is going to be up. It's going to be down. It's never going to be consistent. What we need in this country is a full free system. No more race laws. No more nonsense. No more government regulations keeping people out, because this is something, and I've actually had these conversations with black people. If you're not a cater, you suffer the same as the white people do, just FYI. If you're not a cater, life is just as sucky for you as it is for the white people. Because guess what? You also have to go through all of this insane regulation from the government in order to just do business. And this just kills everyone that is involved in it. By the way, Nikki, thank you so much for the 10 community subs.
Our economy,
thank you.
By insulting
love you. Thank you very much.
Our major trading partners in the country. Just in the introduction, you will see that we are going ahead with this conference this morning even though we received legal threats and an official letter yesterday
that
at 3
happened,
o'clock demanding that we cancel this media conference. That letter we received from the legal team of Mr. Fikile and Mbalula. It shows a bit of panic. On a lighter note, you would know that Mr. Mbalula loves to call himself on his social media handle Mr. Fear. Okay, I'm not going to say the word because this is Afriforum TV, where this is also broadcast. Is a family channel. But he said he fears nothing. But of course, the legal letter shows somebody that is very fearful. It says
he deleted the tweet, by the way.
Should not make any allegations, but we feel confident that it is in the public interest, that it is Afriforum's job to make sure that we shine a light on things that what we believe are not correct. That demand was sent yesterday, as I've mentioned, 3 o'clock.
I'll explain after, sir, why that can't happen.
In an hour. We then simply
but I will explain it to you.
That we are not going to adhere to the demand, and we are going ahead, and you're seeing now we are doing it. Our legal team was on standby last night to take action if there was any effort to interdict us from going ahead. But here we are today. Just with regard to the two parts and what we are asking that Mr. Fikile and Mbalula should be held accountable, locally as well as internationally. Locally, we believe nobody is above the law. We believe in the rule of law. And that is exactly why we formed a few years ago the Afriforum Private Prosecution Unit. And we were fortunate to get a great team under the leadership of Advocate Harry Nell. And our whole team consists of those people that successfully prosecuted the late former police commissioner Jackie Selebi. And the reason why we had to do this is because we've seen in the National Prosecuting Authority over many years political interference that prevented people in high positions with political connections from being prosecuted.
Yep.
And that is the work we are doing. So today you will hear.
But remember, guys, we have a
in that regard,
free
remember our prosecution
judiciary
unit focuses simply on the rule of law, on legal issues, on corruption issues, and are not part of a broader political scheme. Then with regard to our international campaign, as I've said, Ernst will give you some statements that was made by Mr. Mbalula. At the moment, Afriforum and the Solidarity Movement are working very hard to try and solve the conflict with the US. That's why we were in the US to ask, do not punish South Africa if you are angry with ANC politicians. And in that regard, we believe that we have made progress. But for some reason, Mr. Mbalula thinks it's a good idea to try and sabotage this process. It is actually not very clever. While you are in negotiations to solve a problem, for Mr. Mbalula to come and say over the last week or two that the US ambassador is drunk, that he's a racist, and make all those remarks, that is somebody that does not want to promote the interests of this country and the people of this country.
True.
It's a selfish attitude where he wants to promote his own ambitions to become the ANC leader. He wants to promote short-term gains with regard to the upcoming election for the ANC. And he simply does not care what happens to the country and the country's people. We know that punitive measures and economic sanctions will make the joblessness situation worse in the country. We will see growing poverty in the country. And it seems like Mr. Mbalula would just then go ahead. He loves posting photographs of himself with his designer clothes. You cannot, on the one hand, have somebody living in luxury, wearing designer clothes, and then doing things that will harm the normal people in this country. And that is why this dossier will also be used to tell the US and other countries that want to take punitive measures against the country, do not act against the country. If you want to act against people like Mr. Mbalula. And in the US, they have the Magnitsky Act, which allows for individual sanctions. And this dossier, we believe, would help.
Afriforum is going after Fikile.
To rather get this alternative. We do this out of loyalty to South Africa to prevent punitive action against the country. That is my introduction. Maybe the members of the media can give me some guidance. Should we play musical chairs and let Aaron sit this side, then we don't have to move all this stuff. Okay. Okay, you can expropriate my seat without any compensation.
Nil compensation. He's still compensating you. It's just nil, according to the DA and the ANC. I will give you guys my thoughts after.
Thank you very much for coming here to report on this breaking news. This news that I firstly want to intro by waving to Mr. Mbalula, who is definitely not only himself tuning in, but also his army of lawyers that he rushed to appoint yesterday before he even knew what Afriforum was going to say. It seems like he had a feeling in his gut it was going to be substantial. And we have a saying in Afrikaans that goes, desperate katte maak desperate spronge. And I think in English I can translate it to, desperate cadres make very desperate jumps. And that's what we've been seeing for the past 24 hours. Not a man that's cool, calm and collected, but a man that's jumping from left to right, making tweets, deleting.
I just want to say it's not just him, it's also Cyril Ramaphosa. If you look over the last few months, really, you see the ANC getting ever more desperate with every passing day. Just more blame, more sort of looking to pass the blame to anyone that sticks out to try and push this away from themselves. So I think they know something huge is coming, and they know that unless they can get the world to think that America is being unfair, they're in serious crap.
Deleting tweets, posting more, making more posts, deleting more posts, not being sure about what to say, thinking this is the right thing to say, then erasing it, saying, oh, that's not the right thing to say. That's panic behavior. That's not cool as a cucumber behavior. And I've got some bad news, unfortunately, for Mr. Mbalula. He likes to say the line of, we will not be bullied. Unfortunately, disclaimer, there will be bullying today. Bullying with the truth, bullying using the facts. Not bullying using falsehoods, because when you hit Afriforum with falsehoods, we hit back with the truth, and that's what will be happening here today. But firstly, who is Mr. Fikile Mbalula? I think that's the question that needs to be answered first. Not what is he most famous for, but what is he most infamous for? Is it the fact that every government department that he touches, he demonstrates a reverse Midas touch, that everything he touches turns to dysfunction and failure? Is that what he is most infamous for? Is it the trail of corruption and criminality allegations that follow him wherever he goes? Is it the gross displays of personal wealth while his people die, while the children of his people die in pit toilets? Is that the most infamous thing about Mr. Mbalula? Is it how he tries to sabotage and destroy South Africa's diplomatic relationship with key trading partners like the United States? Or is it the racist hatred he appears to hold for the white citizens of his country, particularly Afrikaners?
All of the above.
A hatred that drips from every ranting and raving speech that he has been doing for the past few months and beyond, filled with falsehoods and disinformation. You decide what is the most defining characteristic of Mr. Mbalula, and after reading Afriforum's report, you will have an even clearer view. Let's start off firstly with a rotten record. During his tenure as Minister of Police from 2017 to 2018, we saw the number of murders in South Africa increase sharply, the largest single-year jump in over a decade and the largest total in 10 years. Under Mbalula, we also saw an increase in the amount of attempted murders as well as the amount of rapes. During this time, we also saw a dramatic increase in cash and transit heists as well as stock theft. As Minister of Transport between 2019 and 2023, Mbalula oversaw the collapse of passenger rail transport in trips in South Africa. This declined from about 209 million trips in 2019 to just 39 million trips in 2023. Wow. Total freight transported by rail fell by about 25 to 30% under Mbalula's watch as Minister of Transport. And logistics failures in terms of rail and ports cost the South African economy an estimated 500 billion rand in 2022 alone, which is more than 7% of GDP. Transnet also suffered heavy losses during this time, and ports managed by Transnet ranked among the world's worst during Mbalula's tenure. And now, under his watch as ANC Secretary General, it also appears that this reverse Midas touch has followed him. It was reported that the ANC now ranks as the 16th most corrupt organization in the world. Wow. This happened under Mbalula's watch.
Easy.
Congratulations, Fikile. It appears you've helped the ANC reach the final 16 of the Corruption Champions League. I hear the penalty shootouts are quite hectic. But now let's get to the policy extremism that we have seen from Mr. Mbalula and his cadres for the past few months, and especially in 2025. When it comes to policies, Mbalula is undeniably an extremist. At a 2026 rally, Mbalula reiterated the ANC's commitment to expropriation without compensation, and stated that the ANC also intends to push for more extreme policies, such as the nationalizing of the Reserve Bank. Fikile Mbalula has voiced his support and justification for the violent land confiscations of Zimbabwean dictator Robert Mugabe, who Mr. Mbalula considers a hero. In 2022, Mbalula blamed the economic crisis in Zimbabwe on US and UK sanctions, which exclusively targeted corrupt politicians, not the country as a whole, rather than the destructive policies of ZANU-PF, who him and his cadres love so much. Yep. Mbalula also blamed the UK for the horrific events that happened under Mugabe in Zimbabwe, when he said the British had failed to honor what they had promised ZANU-PF, and therefore, in his words, Robert Mugabe had no choice but to embark on a violent revolution. Ramaphosa echoed his ANC comrades' extreme sentiments in 2025. Speaking at an agricultural show in Zimbabwe, President Ramaphosa heaped praise on ZANU-PF's policies, labeling the dictator Robert Mugabe's violent land confiscations as, in his words, ambitious and essential. He emphasized that the South African government seeks to copy ZANU-PF's policies so that South Africa can become more like Zimbabwe, a sentiment that Mbalula seems to share. The Mugabe regime's land policies of the early 2000s being referred to here by Ramaphosa and by Mbalula involved chaotic and often violent land invasions and seizures. Private property rights were severely violated when these policies resulted in thousands of white farmers and their families literally being chased off their land, attacked, and even tortured and murdered. Mugabe's fast-track land reform program resulted in mass human rights violations and the collapse of the Zimbabwean agricultural sector and economy. This caused millions of Zimbabweans to swim across crocodile-infested rivers to flee ZANU-PF's utopia to South Africa. Mbalula has expressed his and the ANC's support multiple times for regimes with horrific human rights records, such as the ones in Cuba, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, North Korea, and Iran.
Yep.
In 2023, an ANC delegation of which Mbalula formed part held a meeting with the terrorist organization Hamas at the ANC's headquarters in Johannesburg. After the meeting, the ANC issued a media statement quoting Mbalula when he said, "The meeting underscored the paramount importance of unity among Palestinian organizations such as the Fatah movement and Hamas in their collective struggle against occupation and collective struggle against occupation and for self-determination." This is a man who praises a terrorist organization responsible for thousands of deaths and tortures.
Sounds normal to me.
In 2024, Mbalula stated on X that, in his words, "We remain forever inspired by Fidel Castro's fearless, radical, and revolutionary struggle against the brutal system of capitalism." At a media briefing in 2023, Mbalula once again showed his extremist views when he defended Naledi Pandor, then Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, after her contact with the terrorist organization Hamas. Mbalula stated, "She has been insulted left and right. There's nothing wrong with what she is doing." What he's talking about is a representative of the South African government meeting with a terrorist organization, something that Mbalula thinks is a fantastic thing.
Yeah, because they're terrorists
Next is
themselves.
the sabotaging of diplomacy. In 2025, Mbalula described the decision by the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio to decline attending the G20 summit in South Africa as shameful and accused the US of cowardly diplomacy. Speaking at a conference in 2025, Mbalula accused the US of displaying, in his words, fascist characteristics and reinforcing outdated racist ideologies. He continued stating that the geopolitical landscape is currently undergoing, in his words, enormous shifts with the rise of ultra-right governments driven by fascist ideologies, end quote. And in a media briefing in 2025, Mbalula dared the US to bring on sanctions, in his words. He reiterated that the ANC will not abandon its racially discriminatory policies even under threat of South Africa being sanctioned.
Yep.
In March 2026, Mbalula accused without evidence the new United States ambassador to South Africa, Brent Bozell, of attending a meeting with the ANC while drunk. No evidence provided, just a slanderous lie. My standards of what it means to do everything in your power to repair a diplomatic crisis very clearly differ wildly from what Mr. Mbalula sees as doing everything you can to repair a diplomatic crisis. Accusing the person on the other side of the table during negotiations to diffuse a diplomatic crisis of being drunk at the meeting is not how you diffuse that crisis. Mbalula clearly holds anti-white views. When referring to the Afrikaner refugees to the United States, Mbalula falsely claimed in 2025 that within a week the refugees that landed in the US started killing each other. That is his words. No
Never
proof,
happened.
no basis for this claim. He just thought it up, it seems. He continues by claiming that killing each other and black people en masse is typical behavior of white South Africans.
Who's killing most people in this country? Are more white people killing black people, or are more black people killing each other and white people? Let's just, we can run this, right? We can run the experiment.
Is that the stance of someone who stands for the truth, who does not hold hatred for a racial group based on their skin color? Mbalula said, talking about white South Africans, this is what they do, killing each other and black people. Is that something that a non-extremist does, slandering an entire racial group as bloodthirsty murderers? He also dismissed the Afrikaner refugees, some of whom fled after surviving multiple farm attacks, as car guards. In 2026, Mbalula once again falsely labeled the Afrikaner refugees to the United States as car guards and blatantly lied that they were now returning to South Africa en masse. Fikile Mbalula never misses an opportunity to express the hatred he clearly holds for white South Africans, the citizens of his country, especially Afrikaners. This hatred is most often expressed by spewing blatant lies and falsehoods that he appears to have just seen on social media and gobbled up uncritically. No evidence is ever provided, just slanderous lies based on his own racial prejudices.
It makes sense. Most of the
What needs to
supporters
also
doesn't
be
even know what evidence
emphasized is the fact that Mr. Mbalula is very clearly a serial liar when it comes to spreading lies to try and not just destroy, but also completely defame anyone that tries to criticize him or anyone that seems to just be someone that he does not like. Mr. Mbalula accused a principal of raping a child, if you remember the Justice for Kwekwe scandal on social media. Claims that have been completely debunked, shown to be complete falsehoods. He also called this principal an animal, dehumanizing him to the fullest extent, saying that this is not what a human being does. That is why Afriforum has opened a criminal injuria case to ensure, against Mr. Mbalula, to ensure that he faces justice. But also, there's a civil case against him as well for these defamatory lies that he has, these criminal injuria lies that he has spread against innocent people. What we have here is a serial liar that lies without a conscience, will destroy anyone if it ensures that it will help him hold on to power and achieve his agenda, even if those people are completely innocent. Where there is smoke, there is fire. And currently there are massive smoke signals above Mr. Mbalula's activities and conduct. Afriforum will ensure that this information is passed on to the relevant people and authorities and ensure that the truth and justice prevails in this case and that Fikile Mbalula is held accountable.
Man, it would be a beautiful day if this guy
and address Mr. Mbalula directly.
actually got wrecked
Justice
by
will
President
prevail.
Trump.
Your intimidation tactics have failed, and prepare to face justice. I've got a very good team behind me alongside Afriforum and our private prosecution unit to ensure that justice prevails. And that's why Afriforum's private prosecution unit exists in the first place, to take on politicians specifically who believe that they are above the law because they have been getting away with so much for so long. And that's why.
Sorry that I'm pausing, guys, but I need to address this very quickly. Lucy, you have bought into one of the most dangerous lies that the ANC could have ever sold you. And that is that you are a victim of America's aggression. You are not. America is not your enemy. If America actually wanted to make South Africa suffer, it would take less than a month to bring this country to its knees. Do yourself a favor. Just go on Google and Google shipping lanes to and from South Africa. Just do that. And see how quickly the US Navy could shut down all ships coming in or leaving South Africa, which would completely destroy this country. If the US wanted to, they could bring this country to its knees by literally just stopping all of US banks to hold or buy South African bonds, which would overnight bankrupt the country and destroy the economy. They're not doing that. The US government is not your enemy. The US government isn't trying to hurt the people of South Africa. The US government is specifically going after the racist ANC and their freedom cadres. You are the one that bought into their lies. They are hiding behind you because they have convinced you that Big Daddy Trump is the big bad guy. And so you sit there hating on Trump, and meanwhile, they're the ones robbing you blind. Just do yourself a favor and educate yourself on what is actually going on in this country.
I also just want to use the opportunity to thank all Afriforum's members that make the private prosecution unit and all of our campaigns possible, that make the things like the Mbalula files, the Mbalula dossier possible, which are now going to be released today. Thank you very much to our members that make that possible. And if you're not a member yet, I do encourage you to become a member today to make more of this fight for the truth possible. And now I'm going to give the floor over to Mr. Harry Nell, who is the head of Afriforum's private prosecution unit, to give you more details on the corruption side of this dossier.
Well, at least Trump would understand that you can't say an toenail. It's a toenail, Calvin. You only put an N after the A if the word starting after it starts with a vowel.
You're too young to know
Bit of free
Monty
knowledge
Python
there for you.
sketches. But in terms of Monty Python sketch, now for something completely different. Today there's 12 policemen appearing in court. So I really hope we see a new dawn. I think Mr. Mutebe was on TV this morning saying that the NPA will now act quickly and decisively against criminals, and really we comment him on that, and we hope it happens, and we will cooperate as far as we can. Mm-hmm. But it seems that in the criminal justice system, you achieve nothing if you don't have a press conference, and specifically if you're surrounded by armed policemen in battle fatigue. We don't have armed policemen in battle fatigue, but we're also complaining about the inefficiency of the criminal justice system. We're here today because of normal human behavior. It's just natural for any person to avoid a difficult decision. It's just natural for any individual to avoid those tasks you don't want to do, but you have to do it because you were told to do it. It's just natural to ignore those tasks that you cannot do and that you refuse to do, or we're here just because of plain incompetence by people that have to take decisions. Perhaps most importantly, we of the view that the NPA act in the way they do just because they hope we will go away, that we'll just go away. In South Africa, and you all know it better than I do, there are new allegations every day. Every day there's something new, then we have to deal with something new. We're dealing with the Mbalula Commission at the moment. We've forgotten about the Zondo Commission. We've forgotten about allegations about current ministers in the cabinet, about corruption allegations against current ministers. So there's always something new, and what happens is that people go away. But we're not going away, not as far as this matter is concerned. I'll deal with it later, but we wrote a letter to Advocate Matibi earlier this week, complaining about what's happening in the MPA, indicating that they've taken irrational decisions, indicating that the decisions is just to protect politicians against prosecution. He now in turn referred it back to the person that took the decision in the first instance, the person that we think acted irrationally, referred it back to him. We really hope that Mr. Matibi will get involved and deal with our letter. What we're dealing with today, and the Mbalula investigation as far as the Dubai holiday is concerned, is a perfect storm. There's a deficient investigation, and there's an NPA acting on a deficient case docket. So the police, if you confront the police, would say, we handed over our case docket to the NPA, ask them. The NPA will say, we received the case docket, there's very little in it, so we can't take a decision. But there's no prosecutor-directed investigation that Mr. Matibi spoke about this morning. Mr. Matibi, this morning on TV, spoke about prosecutor-directed investigation. Now, just to make sure, and I'll deal with all the facts now, just to make sure that nobody thinks that we're dealing with a knee-jerk reaction, that we now decided that it's time to deal with this matter, and it's time to deal with this matter decisively, I have to just tell you that our first letter to the NPA about this matter was on 10th of March 2022. We received no cooperation from the NPA. We went so far as to complain about the inefficiency of the Hawks and the NPA in this investigation of this matter to the President. We wrote a letter to the Presidency in June 2022. We wrote lots of letters in this matter. So it's not something that we decided that we want to deal with this week, that we want to deal with now. We've been dealing with this matter over a very long period of time.
Thank you, Arthur.
Now let me just give you the history of what we're dealing with. Now, we all know we're dealing with a holiday that Mr. Mbalula took to Dubai. We know it. It's not a secret. It was admitted. This holiday was between 28 December 2016 and 3 January 2017. He was then Minister of Sport. We all know, and it's also contained in the case docket, that the cost of that holiday was 684,000 rand, thereabouts. We all know that no payment was made, and that the travel agency then demanded payment in February 2017. It's in the case docket that in February 2017, Sedgers, through a company linked to Sedgers, made the 300,000 rand payment by means of EFT to the travel agent. We also know that there were cash.
Ordinarily, I'm a huge fan of free speech, right? I'm a huge believer in free speech, because I think free speech allows us to have conversations that actually matter and hopefully arrive at something that actually matters. The problem with you, Calvin, and I say this as someone who allows anyone to speak on my channel without fail, is that you're not here to have any real conversations. You clearly don't know anything about South Africa. You don't even know the history of South Africa. You don't even know the people who are involved, and yet you have already shown that you have come to a conclusion based purely on the fact that you think one person is white and another person is black. You don't even have the basic know-how to know that Mbalula is black. The name is black. When's the last time you've heard of a white person named Mbalula? Like, are you out of your mind? This just shows you the levels and depths of your ignorance. So I'm going to remove you. You can go scream in the void somewhere else because you're making everyone else more stupid by just being here. So good luck to you, sir. Have a great time.
Deposits of 300,000 rand more, cash deposits into the account of the travel agent, and we also know that there was a further 85,000 rand cash deposit at OR Tambo into the account of the travel agent. So that happened. That happened in February 2017 and months and days following that.
But
you're welcome here. That on 9th October 2017, Eyewitness News published a report about Mr. Fikile's holiday, and saying in the report they said that Sedgers paid for his holiday. The strangest things happen. On that same day that Eyewitness News made the report, Mr. Mbalula started paying back. He paid back Sedgers through the company that they used on the same day. So that's in October, after the holiday that ended in January and after the money received in February. So he decided to pay that back. On that same day, Afriforum, through Monique Charter, referred the matter to the public protector. So the public protector dealt with the matter, and at the hearing at the public protector, on behalf of Mr. Mbalula, through his lawyers, they indicated that the money received was a loan. It was a loan, and that he paid it back. On 19 December 2019, the public protector made a finding. The public protector made a finding, and she referred the matter back to the NPA to investigate money laundering. Now, obviously, that never happened. The NPA took absolutely no further steps, and that caused the same Monique Charter to register a case docket in August 2019. Now, a timeline in this matter is really important. So in 2019, case docket is opened. That case docket was then nolly prosecuted on the 3rd of August 2023.
Wow,
So,
4 years
in the letter
later.
we received, Mr. Mzinyati of the NPA indicated that there's no evidence supporting allegations of corruption because there was no quid pro quo, and that this was merely a loan and that the loan was paid back.
By
So
who?
those were the reasons given for the failure to prosecute.
Azrael, thank
We
you
dealt
so
with
much.
those reasons.
I
We dealt
appreciate
with those reasons in a comprehensive representation to the National Prosecuting Authority on the 2nd of October 2025. We wrote to them indicating that there's a deliberate misunderstanding of the definition of corruption, that there was a deliberate failure to ensure that there's a completed investigation. We dealt with, we even in our letter of October 25 furnished them with a draft charge sheet saying that they could use this draft charge sheet because when we received the case docket, we found the draft charge sheet drafted by a prosecutor of the MPA in the case docket. Now, a prosecutor would only draft the charge sheet if that prosecutor thought that it's a matter that should be prosecuted. So there was a draft charge sheet in that case docket, but there was no prosecutor. So it's now 6 months later. We haven't received a response on our representations of 2 October
Debbie, thank you.
2025. But then something else happened.
Are you guys happy with your tax money? Just listening to this. Because remember, part of your taxes goes to fund the MPA. and the criminal justice system. And you're hearing, this is how they get away with everything. They can do literally whatever they want, and nothing ever bloody well happens to them. Thank you so much to Debbie, to you, as well as to Azrael. Thank you so much for the memberships and everything else. I'm trying not to pause too much, guys. So, I also don't want to speak over Afriforum. So please, if I'm pausing too much and you just want to hear what Afriforum has to say, you can let me know. Guys, dude, stop pausing. We want to hear what they have to say. I just want to get what do you feel at this moment?
A new national director was appointed. The new national director made a public pronouncement on the 12th of March 2026, and we thought, well, perhaps let's try again. Let's take him on his word. What he said during this press briefing, he said, South Africa is one of the few countries that prosecute former ministers for corruption. We thought about it, and the word former struck us. So former ministers would be prosecuted, former officials would be prosecuted, not those currently in the cabinet, also not those who are currently in certain positions. And just think of the allegations against current ministers in the cabinet that's not been pursued. Think of the Zondo Commission's recommendations that were not dealt with. So
not only former, always remember how this works, guys. A current minister will not be charged by the MPA. A former minister will be charged by the MPA. The court will find him guilty. He'll develop a little... he'll go to the courts and say... and the courts will say, oh, you sound like you're on the verge of death. You have to be let go. You have to go free. We can't have a sick person in the prisons. So that's the pipeline of the independent and free judicial system of South Africa.
11th of March, something else happened. On the 11th of March, in the Mbalula Commission, the following happened. In the Mbalula Commission, Mr. Shibiri, Major General Shibiri, gave evidence. He gave evidence about a 70,000 rand loan he received from Mr. Mbalula. He received the loan because he wanted to service his child's car. Now, what's important is the word loan. Now, he was taken on by saying, but how can this be a loan? Isn't it sheltered as a loan? And everything that was said in the Mbalula Commission, in the interaction between the Judge Mbalula and the witness, is a mirror image of what we're dealing with here. In the Mbalula Commission, they put it to Mr. Shibiri, you only paid back once the police raided your place. Then you decided, let us pay this back. We say the first payment in this particular matter was after the news broke on Eyewitness News. That should be investigated. So our whole approach is, we're approaching the MPA, we're saying to the MPA that your decision not to prosecute, because we now have the case docket, is irrational and it's not in terms of the law. It's a deliberate misunderstanding of the definition of corruption. The definition of corruption was established and accepted by the Supreme Court of Appeal by NPA prosecutors in the Celebe matter and the Block matter. It was the NPA prosecutors that argued in terms of the definition of corruption that we think should be applied daily. The definition of corruption is so easy. It's if you ask for or receive or pay a benefit, which creates a dynamic whereby you'll be indebted to somebody to do him favors forever. That's it. There's no indication of a quid pro quo that there must be a quid pro quo. The understanding of a quid pro quo is because we understand the crime of bribery. In terms of bribery, you have to pay money and get something for it. In terms of corruption, in terms of the Celebe matter, the definition was settled and it was just so easy. We see lots of people having lots of discussions about corruption, and all we say is just apply the correct definition of corruption. So we say it mirrors the Mbalula issue, and there we indicate, and you all have our letter. If I can just refer you to our letter, paragraphs 19 and 20. Now that makes it clear. In paragraph 19 and 20, the following, we refer to what was said by Judge Mbalula to General Chibiri, where he said, I suggest to you that once there were these raids, you saw the police were catching on to Mr. Mbalula, and you decided that money that had been paid to you, not as a loan, I suggest, you should now suddenly pay back to Mr. Mbalula so as to make it look like a loan. We say, and if we say this, it's just to indicate to the MPA that they should change the irrational decision. We say, why can't you not say, if you deal with the Mbalula matter, I suggest to you that once there were these questions by the media, you saw the media was catching on to you, and you decided that money had been paid to you, not as a loan, I suggest, you should...
Yeah, I either missed that or he just didn't do a good job of explaining it. But, you know, the loans and everything else, so this was to Cat Mbalula. That changes things considerably. But I would even go so far as to say, why is a politician... Because remember, in business, there are certain things that are just not allowed. So, for example, you'll have a ton of companies that say it is illegal for a manager to borrow money from one of the employees, right? And there's a reason for it. It creates a weird sort of circumstance and a weird relationship where now that employee has a sense of power over the manager. And the manager is supposed to have the power over the employee to make sure that the employee is actually doing their job, right? And so you have laws against that sort of thing. It's the same reason why in companies they'll have managers can't date subordinates, right? You can't have that subordinate manager relationship because it creates a weird effect where in what universe is it okay for a politician to receive a loan from a citizen? I mean, even if it is a loan, doesn't matter. That cannot be allowed because that politician is supposed to enforce the justice system and to keep the country honest. Now suddenly you have private citizens that have something over the politicians by lending money to them and all the rest of it. That alone should be illegal. Like that just by itself should be illegal.
Now suddenly pay back to Mr. Docrat and Sedgers so as to make it look like a loan. It's a mirror. So in 2 October, and we're saying that 2 October is still our main argument.
Yeah,
2 October, we dealt with the law. We dealt with the definitions of corruption. We dealt with the application of the definitions on the facts that we have in the case docket. In 2 October, we dealt with the deficiencies in the investigation, which we say is deliberate, and we say that the NPA should prosecute because the failure to prosecute is irrational. Having said that, this is our last outreach to the NPA. There's a new national director. We hope there's a new dawn. The national director said this morning that they will act decisively, that they will act quickly. So we really hope that the NPA will take a decision, failure of which we now have the case docket. This is our last outreach. We will develop the law to privately prosecute Mr. Mbalula because we say, and based on our understanding of the case docket, based on our understanding of the law, there's a very good matter made out and that a prosecution should follow. So
the NPA isn't broken, guys. This is what, and I understand that there's a chance that what Afriforum is doing is they have to first establish a president so that they can actually go ahead and start private prosecutions. So I understand that. But just that language here, we hope that there's a new dawn. They're not broken. The NPA operates exactly the way that it's supposed to. Protect the cadres. That's the job and the role of the National Prosecuting Authority. Protect the cadres. Protect the freedom fighters. This is why the VBS scandal never went anywhere. Julius Malema still walks free. This is why Jacob Zuma still walks free. This is why Shabir Sheikh still walks free. Every single person that has been found guilty by a court of justice has eventually walked free, and the NPA does absolutely nothing about it because it works as intended. The idea was to never allow freedom fighters to face justice. Simple as. And Derrida, I'll answer your question after the stream.
So that is what we want to do. We first have to develop the law, and we will develop the law. So I'll be willing to answer any question based on the law and the case docket and the information we have. But I just want to also then elaborate on what Mr. Van Zyl said, and that is, we've also now this week received the case docket on the criminal injuria matter. Mr. Jacob Pieterse opened a criminal injuria matter against Mr. Mbalula for things that he said about him in a public address. We've now received the case docket back. Now, firstly, we received the case docket back, and unsurprisingly, there was absolutely no investigation done on that case docket.
Yeah, of course.
Our statement is in the case docket, and the next moment, the case docket landed up with the prosecutor who decided not to prosecute.
Of course.
There was absolutely, that's all. We received the case docket, and that's all that in the case docket. So that brings us to a nolle prosecute about criminal injuria to case number 2. The first case was I've forgotten his name, Gade. Mr. Gade in the Eastern Cape, who made allegations against Mr. Pieterse. There was a nolle there. We're in possession of the case docket. We're considering private prosecution. Now we have Mr. Mbalula's case docket. We consider private prosecution. There's one other outstanding, and that's the case docket against Mr. Malema. We are waiting the NPA to finalize their investigation. I just want to indicate, to elaborate on what Mr. Van Zyl said. Mr. Mbalula, in a public speech, said the following about Mr. Jacob Pieterse. He said, it is moral indictment of our society that predators still find a refuge in institutions meant to safeguard children, meaning the school. Even more disgraceful is the involvement of organizations like Afriforum, who shield suspects rather than standing for justice. He continued by saying, you see, when a person is sick, a rape is 7 years old. It's not a question of consciousness that you need to convert this person. It's an animal. There's nothing you can do about that. It's not a person who can rape a 7-year-old. That's not a human being. That is why we say Afriforum goes and defends such people. Animals, raping 7 years old, that is even beyond animals. I don't know. It's cannibalism. I read Mr. Mbalula's threatening letter with pleasure, indicating that he is indicted himself on the allegations he made, that he warned us not to make today. So we will be pursuing both these matters. Thank you.
Easy.
Thank you, Advocate Nel. Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
Good morning, Zineko Mhlaba from Newsroom Africa. Advocate Nel, you are stating that the NPA has not been coming to the party in terms of showing some attitude to take action against Mr. Mbalula. Why are you why are you still trying to convince the NPA through your means and the submissions you've made? What will be your response if someone says that maybe there's just no case at all in the first place? So I'm trying to get why you still go in the NPA route. If you do have the capacity to prosecute him privately, why have you been delayed?
Mr. Mhlaba.
Yes.
Mr. Mhlaba, it's a very good question. And the answer to that is to enable us to get a nolle prosecute certificate, we have to ensure that the NPA has taken a rational decision. To prosecute corruption in this country, by means of private prosecution needs development of the law. Because we have to develop the law, we have to tick every box before we develop the law. And this is the last box we want to tick. The last box is to say, you're irrational. This is the law, apply the law. Because as you know, Mr. Mhlaba, and as other accused people have learned, once we privately prosecute, there will be an application for cost. So we have to make sure that we act reasonably before we take the next step. To answer your question, clearly, we develop the law, we have to tick all the boxes before we develop the law to ensure that corruption is a matter that we can privately prosecute. We think it's a brilliant matter to develop the law. Good facts make for good law, and we think this matter qualifies.
What's interesting about this, and now we're in the Q&A. I'll pause after every answer if I feel it's necessary. But what's interesting about this is if the law gets developed to the point where Afriforum can show that the NPA has deficient or has repeatedly shown deficiency in prosecuting corruption, I believe that it's going to open the door for a lot more private lawsuits against corruption in this country, which would actually be quite funny. Because can you imagine every single ANC minister being tied up in court with hundreds of corruption cases brought against them by private individuals? So Sakeliga, Afriforum, Solidarity, the business chambers, every single one of these organizations just bringing lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit against the government privately, no longer having to go through the NPA. So maybe there's something interesting to be said about this.
If I may just add, I think as an organization, we want the criminal justice system to work. And we also want to give people a chance. And we now have a new director, and we want to give him a chance also to make sure and give him a chance to move the National Prosecuting Authority into another direction where nobody is above the law. And I think this last instance is also an opportunity for him to show that there's real change in the National Prosecuting Authority to make sure that we tackle issues when there are serious allegations like these against Mr. Mbalula, that the new NPA, if I can call it, and the new leadership will have a different stance and hold people accountable.
You had a follow-up question, Mr. Mhlaba.
Yes, please. On the issue of taking the information you're presenting to the media today to the US, Mr. Cleary made mention of the fact that, this is the information that can be used, if I understand you correctly, by the US to take any action against politicians in South Africa, such as Mbalula. I want to find out from that point of view, why would you take such an action or encourage such action against a political figure, not necessarily government officials such as the president and the minister of DECO or international relations?
Advocate, you can sit like that. Can you? I presume you would be able to hear what I'm saying here. I think we must also firstly understand the structure of Afriforum. We have on the one side, Afriforum as an activist part in which we say, in terms of the ANC's balance of forces ideology, we have to, through various methods, put pressure to make sure that justice prevails and that the interest of the country is being served. Then we have the other part of the private prosecution unit, which we are very careful not to involve in the activist part of what we are doing. The reason why the private prosecution unit was formed is that we found that the NPA no longer prosecuted without fear, favour or prejudice. And when Advocate Nel came to accepted our offer, our agreement that was that he would focus on prosecuting locally without fear, favour or prejudice. And that is the reason why that question, I will answer it, because this unit cannot get involved in terms of what's happening internationally. Why are we doing this? We are doing this for the benefit of South Africa and its people. We know what the implications would be of further punitive measures by the United States against the country. We try to avert that by trying to find solutions to this international friction that we are seeing. But if these efforts are being sabotaged, as Mr. Mbalula is doing, the country will bear the brunt of his reckless behavior. And then we would say, well, if you're going to act against somebody, we would say we have to provide an alternative. And that alternative is, if you're angry with people insulting you, don't punish all of us, because everybody in this room will be negatively affected. Rather punish that person that's responsible for this. And that is our call. It's actually a last resort, because we tried through discussions, also with the ANC, to say, let's try and find a solution. But it seems like Mr. Mbalula is hell-bent, for the benefit of his own aspirations to become the leader of the ANC, for that short-term gain, to harm the country. And that is why we are taking a stance. If we ask the US to act against Mr. Mbalula, it's an act of loyalty to the people of this country.
It is.
Because we're trying to avert them being punished for this stupidity that we see from Mr. Mbalula.
There's a question at the back.
Hallo julle, Mariska Koetser from The Citizen. I just want to find out, a few months ago, Afriforum released the Malema dossier. Do we have any feedback on how that's going, please?
Yes, well, we gave that dossier to the US government, the embassy locally. We also handed it in to the State Department when one of our colleagues visited Washington. But of course, the question if it's going to happen is something for the US to do. We don't prescribe to them what they should do. We make, we say what we think should happen. And there's, of course, in terms of Magnitsky, it doesn't happen overnight. There's a long process that needs to be followed in that regard. And I think in terms of one of the asks, what we are seeing from the US, as the ambassador mentioned, is that in South Africa we have to see the government condemning the kill the boer, kill the farmer chant. At this stage, it seems that government is still refusing to do that. And now this is an alternative method to take a strong stance against this hateful chant, is to take punitive measures against somebody that makes themselves guilty of that. So I'm still hopeful that there would be progress with regard to the Julius Malema dossier, but where it stands now, I unfortunately don't have specific details.
We'll see.
Any other questions?
If I can ask a question in private, maybe.
Yes. No, we will be available now. If I'm correct, Advocate Nell will also be available for
That's right.
interviews.
Thank you so much for the 350 rand. Really appreciate
Yes,
you, sir.
Sorry,
Thank you.
I also made mention of the fact that you are in negotiations with the US now. Can you further explain what is that on the guard? Is it between trying to solve the relations or tensions between the two countries, and how is that going? And does that mean you've taken a different position now on the issue between South Africa and the USA? Because initially you seemed to be very clear, and you were clear with being in opposition to the country's position on that US issue. So if you now change your mind, what's the approach now? What's the attitude of the current negotiations they're having with the US?
No, our attitude has been the same all along. The reason why people might think otherwise is because of false propaganda by the likes of Mr. Fikile and Mbalula. Maybe I should just give you a timeline what happened. On the 20th of December in 2024, President Ramaphosa signed the Expropriation Act. He did not tell the country. Only on the 23rd of January last year, 2025, did he make public that he signed the Expropriation Act. He did not inform the ministers in his government of national unity, even Minister McPherson, under whose department it falls. And then what happened, if you take the timeline from 23 January to the 2nd of February, when President Trump made his statement on Truth Social, it's 10 days. And then President Trump took on the issue of disrespect for property rights in the country. So there's a direct correlation. Afriforum was not involved in that process. When we became involved was on the 3rd of February last year. The ANC sent out a statement, and they even put our name in the beginning of the heading, say Afriforum disinformation. And that, of course, is a clear effort to try and avert taking responsibility for the negative consequences of their own behavior. They had to get a scapegoat. Then in the timeline, a few weeks later, Afriforum and our colleagues of the Solidarity Movement went to the US. And you can go and look at the Washington Memorandum we tabled openly in that time. And it states quite clearly, do not punish South Africa. That was the reason for us going, because we saw the punitive members in the social media post by President Trump. And that was our goal, to say, try and solve this. Let us help to get a solution, because the normal people in this country are going to be harmed. And of course, we were willing to help with that. So that was our stance then. It is our stance now. And we have continued with those negotiations. And that is why this is so serious. This is a serious issue with regard to what Mr. Mbalula did over the last week or so. Because we believe a solution is possible. A solution also in the interest of the South African people. It is possible with the South African government that there can be an agreement. We are willing to participate in getting such an agreement. We are working quite hard on that. And then you have somebody like Mr. Mbalula just sabotaging the whole process from the side. And that is why we are also taking a strong...
It's not just Mbalula. It's Ramaphosa as well. Mbalula is saying that you should be charged with treason. Not just you, but people like me, YouTubers, who call out this ANC government and show the world what this government is up to. We're also called traitors to this country. But Cyril Ramaphosa is doing the exact same thing, calling people traitors, saying that there must be laws against people speaking out and harming the dignity of our people. So this idea that the relationship is going to get fixed between the ANC and America, the relationship is exactly the way that the ANC wants it, because from the ANC's perspective, America is their main enemy.
Stance against in this regard. If the US is going to be angered at what Mr. Mbalula said over the weekend, don't punish us. So our stance has been the same all along. Yes.
Turkmen Terzi representing Turkish Minute. ANC SG Mbalula said he has not been approached by you. So are you going to request a meeting with him to explain your accusation about him?
As far as approaching Mr. Mbalula is concerned, I mean, on behalf of the prosecution unit, we have no duty, obligation whatsoever. We're not allowed to, because we say that there should be action taken against him, that we say that he's a suspect in a matter. So we're not even allowed to talk to him in terms of this matter. So as far as the prosecution is concerned, what we shared with you today is letters we've written and our views about the prosecution, but we have no obligation. We're not allowed to engage with a suspect in a matter before we make any announcement. So we've seen what he said, but we didn't understand it.
Easy.
Talisobo from EWA. My question is for Mr. Nel. I think Mr. Nel, obviously, by any objective reading of this matter, the Dubai trip, as even the private prosecutor found, it's a clear conflict of interest in terms of how it was funded by obviously a supplier to the government. But just maybe in terms of maybe your understanding and your experience, just maybe how easy or difficult is it to try and get like a conviction in terms of cases like this where there is some gratification to a government official from someone who's a service provider to a government? Is it an easy case? Because I think there is obviously a reason why the NPA declined to prosecute. Maybe it couldn't, prove the corruption. Is conflict of interest reaches that threshold that someone can be convicted in a court?
I really appreciate questions on the law, so I can deal with that. You won't believe me, but I'm going to say the following. I think it's an uncomplicated matter. I really do. I think it's an uncomplicated matter. We set it out in our letters that it's uncomplicated. Once you have a minister, you have a supplier, and you have an undue benefit, I say that is a very strong case to prosecute.
Yeah.
And I want to repeat it.
Makes sense to me.
And really, it's in case law. The definition of corruption, if it's properly applied, will make all these prosecutions so easy. If you receive or ask for a benefit, and that creates a dynamic whereby whereby I'll be indebted to do your favors forever. That's it. No quid pro quo, nothing else, just that. Now, I apologize, I didn't catch your name, but if you apply that definition on this matter, and you take one step further and you apply the Mr. Judge Mlanga's view on a loan, then you're there. But there's one aspect that I haven't addressed. In terms of the act, a loan is also an undue benefit.
Yes.
Because
Thank
you and I, if we need money, where will we go?
To the bank.
We have to go to a bank or some institution. So, but that's a stranger thing, and we address it in our 2 October letter. A loan in itself is an undue benefit.
Yep.
And if it's a loan from a supplier, makes it even worse. So
What did I say, guys?
my answer to your question is,
I'm a lawyer now.
It's uncomplicated prosecution. If the suspect in this instance was Nel, I'm convinced he would have been prosecuted.
Another question there.
Yes, ma'am.
Zara Groenewald, SABC. This is just surrounding the request for individual sanctions to be placed on Mr. Mbalula. I know that Afriforum has been advocating for sanctions to be placed on individuals since last year and prior. Have those conversations focusing on Mr. Mbalula already begun with the US? And how have they been received?
Well, those things we cannot discuss publicly. We have met with representatives of the US government, but I'm not at liberty to give more information.
Crap. It's coming, boys.
Any other questions? Okay. As I've said, we are available. To the rest of you going home, have a safe trip.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. So let's quickly discuss this. My own thoughts on this. As with almost all things in this country, we see the legal system, and by this I don't mean the courts, but the legal system is now also being privatized. This is sort of the one good thing about the incompetence of the ANC, is that thanks to that incompetence, almost everything is just consistently being privatized. Because, well, if we need to get things going, right? And so ultimately, we're seeing the government is supposed to be the prosecutor. In almost all other countries, if you need someone criminally prosecuted, you have to go to the DA in America, or to the assistant DA, or to the prosecutors, and they're the ones that have to bring the case. Afriforum is already setting up laying the groundwork in order to move this into, into the public sphere, so that we can actually be the ones, or the private sphere, so that we can be the ones to prosecute this stuff. It's going to be interesting. I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to achieve anything. And that is, to answer your question, Derrida, what can taxpayers do in order to stop this? The answer is not much. And one of the answers I am legally not allowed to give you. There is a certain type of thing that citizens could do as a last resort in order to punish their governments. But the mere mention of that thing would be a criminal act in and of itself. And I want to make clear, I'm not suggesting that people should do that. I'm merely saying that that is definitely one way which in the past have allowed for citizens to get their governments to listen. That being said, I don't even think that would be successful here in South Africa, because the one thing that the ANC has proven is that they are willing to watch South Africa burn if it means sticking with their ideological partners. So if it means that they continue to be, super racist towards white people, because I genuinely now believe, my personal belief now, is that the ANC's starting point is the punishment and also the complete eradication of white people in South Africa. That is what they want. But the ANC also understands that getting there needs to be done carefully. If they move too fast, this would... And by white people, I probably shouldn't even say just white people that they want to get rid of, because I think it goes a little bit more ideological than that. Right now, white people represents the majority of the ANC's problem, right? But it's not really the skin alone that is their issue, because you can actually see how the ANC treats black and colored people who are not communist. They get the same kind of treatment. They get attacked in the exact same way. In fact, some black people actually get attacked more than a lot of white people for not necessarily buying into the victim narratives and buying into the communist narratives. So I actually think what this is fundamentally is a hatred of white people, but more because white people tend to be more individualistic. Culturally speaking, it's only really the West that ever believed in individualism. You don't find that from a cultural perspective anywhere else, right? You don't find that from a cultural perspective in the Middle East, in the Far East, China, Japan, South Korea. These are not societies that really believe that strongly in the rights of the individual. It's really only the West that has this sort of built-in belief that the individual is at its core the smallest minority, but also the most important group, is the individual. So from the ANC's perspective, this represents their biggest issue. They want to get rid of the individualism in this country, and they want to bring about a sort of communalism. Communism is just communalism, right? They want to bring that communalism in. And so they'll tolerate white people like Kim Heller or Carl Niehaus that are willing to give up their freedoms and their individuality in order to serve the black sort of Pan-Africanist viewpoint. But at its core, I think getting rid of every single white person is the goal. And then once they've gotten rid of all of the white people, they will almost certainly clamp down on the black people that think for themselves, on the colored people that think for themselves, on the Indian people that think for themselves. And they'll just systematically clear out all of those people once they've gotten rid of the white people. So that's what I think is about to happen here. How comes they can't investigate the cartels busy selling drugs to South Africans? Because they are the owners of the cartels. After all that, what minority will be next? Vinda, Sutu. As I said, it's going to be after this. It is going to be a case of going after anyone who doesn't support communism. Because communism is the end goal, right? It's where they would like to end up. Also, just quickly want to take 2 seconds to say massive thank you to Turks Faye. All I want as a white South African is equality under the law. Also, a big shout out to Jaguar for the 5 community subs, Nikki for the 5 memberships, Azriel for the 5 memberships, Debbie for the 5 memberships, Turks Faye, welcome as a member to the channel, and then also for the 350 Rand donation. It is very much appreciated. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll see. I don't know if like I said, I don't think individual sanctions will work. I don't think sanctions in general will work because the ANC, they are ideologically captured. So we'll see exactly how that plays out. I'm not convinced. I don't even know. Like, the problem is, even if this court case does go through, right? So even if Afriforum is able to establish precedent, legal precedent specifically. Derrida, thank you so much for joining the membership. Thank you. You're far too kind. Even if that happens, what I think you end up with is now you just have to go deal with the courts. Right? So you're still going to be stuck without justice. Because if you don't believe this by now, you've not been paying attention. Our courts are as captured as the MPA is, as the government is, as everyone is, right? It's captured all the way through. So yeah, I don't think you'll ever see justice really take place in this country. At least not unless President Trump actually gets involved. Right? If America gets involved, we will probably see justice, but it's going to take a lot. It's going to be a lot of work, at least in my opinion. No, I mean, but the courts have already been bought and paid for. So why would they care? All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's going to be it from me. I just wanted to live stream this. Originally, I wouldn't stream on Wednesdays because live streams are, and remember this, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays from 12 o'clock. But because we had Afriforum's little talk, I thought I wanted to be live for this so that I can watch it with you and so that we can sort of discuss and talk about it. I hope you enjoyed, watching it with me. And I will be here tomorrow. So tomorrow, if you have any questions that you would like to ask, if you are a member, you can just ask that in the community section and I'll see the question and I'll answer it tomorrow. If you're not a member, but you still want to ask a question, just be here tomorrow. I always spend the last hour or hour and a half of the streams answering questions. So, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much for watching, to each and every one of you. Thank you so much to every single one of you that's supporting the channel, that gave money, that, gave memberships. You guys are super appreciated. Literally everything that I do because you enable me to do that. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Right now, I'm going to go edit some videos because there's a bunch of videos that needs to go up, including a bunch of conversations we had yesterday. So thank you so much to each and every one of you. I hope you have a wonderful Wednesday. I hope it's, Wednesdays sort of, I don't like Wednesdays because it's, right in the middle of the week. But maybe you guys like it. So, good luck to you. And if I don't see you again, enjoy the rest of your week. As always, be good to each other, be kind to each other. And I shall see all of you in the next one. Peace.